Good morning, world. That you woke up this morning is no small feat. Many did not. So I'm grateful you're here. I'm grateful you're here for this conversation. It's going to be an amazing conversation. I have an amazing guest, Dr. Noni Carter, and we'll be engaging in a conversation. I'll tell you a little bit about Dr. Noni later. But now, Dr. Noni, I'm surprising you, but I do need to ask you a question now.
Okay, sounds good.
You know, as likable as you are and as lovable as you are, how do you get a squirrel to like you?
How do you get a squirrel to like you? Patience, a lot of
Ah,
patience.
no,
Act
act like a nut.
like a Oh, it's the opposite of what I was thinking. What's Sorrel? Go ahead.
It's always my pleasure to practice being present with the world. So, Dr. Noni, I'm going to teach you the way of the daily huddle.
Sounds
We
great.
begin the daily huddle with these questions for a very particular reason. My brain and our brains as human beings have the tendency to be distracted at all times. So we ask these questions to presence ourselves in this moment. And the first question is, where are you? And the answer is, I am here, right where I'm supposed to be. Because you couldn't be any other place, could you?
Not at all. I
Uh,
love that grounding in the present moment.
and the second question is, what time is it?
Hmm.
And the answer, the time is now. Because it is really just now. In this moment, unless I bring the past or future I'm fearing here, everything is just fine, just as they are. We ask a third question, which is, how are you? And our answer is always, I am the way I say I am. So I want to ask you, if you get to say the way you are this morning, Dr. Carter, how are you?
I am filled with joy to be here and now in this moment with you.
And this is how you are, because you
This is how
say.
I am.
Rashida, good morning. What are you grateful for, and who will you hug today?
Good morning, my dear. Good morning. Oh, what I'm grateful for. I'm grateful for one day more to my calendar. One day more to my calendar. And I already start hugging. I already hug both of my grandson that is here with me. They are babies, 3-year-old and a 1-year-old grandson that I have, and they are and they don't want to let go of my neck. So I hugging my grandsons this morning.
Awesome. Rashida, welcome to the Daily Huddle. Molly, welcome to the Daily Huddle. Great to have you here. It is my pleasure and my honor to introduce our guest this morning inside of a question that goes like this. Who is it that you're choosing to be today, and why? Whether you're an entrepreneur or running your business by yourself as a solopreneur, whether you have a team of 200 people or 60,000 people, you're leading a business. There is who's leading the business that's critical to the matter. So we're bringing this question to you today for that reason. Who is it that you're choosing to be today, and why? And Dr. Noni is going to be in conversation with us. She is an Edward Jones financial advisor. Don't let that fool you, because she believes the importance of understanding the stories around what matters most to her clients, their families, and their businesses. She develops tailored, quality, comprehensive, and forward-thinking strategies to help clients reach their ever-evolving goals, partnering with them for the long term. Now, after I read that, you might be thinking, oh my God, she is just a financial advisor, but she's not. Dr. Noni is a historical and speculative fiction author. In fact, she published her first book at a very young age. She is a performance artist and classical pianist with a PhD in French and Francophone studies from Columbia and a BA from Harvard. She is the author of the YA historical fiction novel, Good Fortune, published by Simon & Schuster in 2010, and the recipient of the 2019 Ken Phyllis Naylor Working Writer Fellowship for her work in progress YA novel Womb Talk. So I could say a whole bunch more about Dr. Noni, but I want you to get a piece of her heart, a piece of her love for people, and a piece of her joy for life. Dr. Noni, it's so amazing to have you here. Thank you and welcome to the Daily Huddle.
Thank you, Sorrel. It's so amazing to be here. I'm grateful to you for this platform to talk a little bit about the self behind the work, who I'm choosing to be every day and what that looks like and means for entrepreneurs like myself who are out here growing and building. As you said, I'm here in the capacity as a financial advisor, but have quite an extensive mosaic life and background and past, which, in many ways informs the way I'm able to show up authentically with my clients. So I want to talk a little bit about that. And if I'm meandering, just cut me off.
Well, if you don't mind, I'd love for you to begin at a specific place.
Okay.
Which I think really takes us right into who you say you are and what actually drives you on a regular basis as a financial advisor, a human being, an entrepreneur. Now, you wrote your first book at a very young age.
I did, yes.
And I'd love to hear what drove that, what fueled that, and why did you write it?
Absolutely. So, let's back up. Let's go back to that young age. So when I was younger, and I can't even remember when this began, maybe I was 7 or 8, but I was very, very drawn, whether it was an ancestral energetic pool or something else, to the stories and research about the past that wasn't being adequately taught in the schools. I was very aware of that. My family sort of told me that, so I sort of felt an independence to go on my own and do research and listen to my great aunties talk about the family history, write it down. And so I remember going to private school, elementary school, 3 years, where I was the only African-American girl in my cohort. And because of the love of my family, this identity was something I felt proud of and asserted. I'd come to school with hair beautifully braided, in my misguided, well, I say misguided, but at that time there was a celebration of all things African at the time. So I'd make notebooks that were red, black, and green and explain it to my friends. And there were no Black scientists on our curriculum. So I petitioned to talk about Lewis Howard Lattimore, and I, do book reports on historical fiction slave narratives I'd read. So it was very much a part of my elementary school years. Moving into middle school, which is when I started the book, I remember talking about slavery with fellow African-American friends and kind of feeling in them a sense of shame and hurt about the past and, an unwillingness to want to sort of talk about it. And so naturally I started crafting a book. And this was, sort of my attempt to grapple with this history in the present. There was something about the idea that fiction could simultaneously navigate past and present in a way that made you look differently at the world that had a profound impact on me. I read a lot, in my home, autobiography of Malcolm X and Roots and the Black Jacobins, and eventually speculative fiction by Black authors, My Soul to Keep by Tananarive Due, Octavia Butler's Wild Seed. These all had profound impact on me, and definitely led to this book. I edited it for several years, and through a series of serendipitous events, it ended up being picked up 4 years later by Simon & Schuster, who published it in 2010, a few months before I turned 19. I was at Harvard at the time, thought I wanted to go to school for classical piano, but ended up at the Ivy League and with this book published. It was an amazing moment. my life. Terrifying, but amazing in retrospect.
Yeah. Now, why do you say terrifying juxtaposed to the word amazing? Tell us a little more about that. I'd love to hear, and I'd love the world to hear, how did writing this book transform you?
Yeah, absolutely. So writing the book was it was an important part of my well-being when I was in middle school and high school. It allowed me to escape, as many of us go through, questions about yourself as you change, you become a teenager, you grow up. For me, escaping to writing was something that I did on a daily basis. I'd sometimes stay up till 3 o'clock after, finishing schoolwork to sort of run there, to explore the world and my identity. That was my home in a sense. So on the one hand, I understood how powerful it was to be published by a Simon and Schuster at 18, 19. I got that. But at the same time, you're introducing something very intimate to the world. When I first started writing, that wasn't necessarily the intention. And so it was that moment that I think a lot of us as entrepreneurs experience. You have this idea, you have a sense that there's a gap, something missing in the world that you're going to fill. And you spend, months and years sort of crafting what that means and looks like behind closed doors. And then all of a sudden you're on stage, and it's time to go. It's time to expose, your strengths and your weaknesses. And that's definitely what it felt like. I had to stop writing for a while because, I was doing workshops. I was very proud of the work, but it did for a moment shake me up when it came to my capacity to put words on the paper. So it was an interesting moment. It was really scary to sort of be out there in the world. And I think that's what we face as business owners. So I got to learn very early.
Yeah, yeah. And so that's just a piece of the mosaic that you pointed to earlier. Take it maybe a few tiles at a time.
Mhm.
Tell us about the person, that mosaic that is behind the entrepreneur that you are and the financial advisor that you are today. I'm fond of saying, I can't hang on to my past and I can't really worry about the future because I'm here and now. But what I cannot escape, and no one can escape, is that the environment I was in shaped me. The education you got shaped you. So tell us, what shaped you and who's behind the entrepreneur you are today?
Absolutely. I'm grateful that we began with that book process because, again, that's very much learning to have a sense of independence and discipline in writing and having a vision that you're moving towards and that you succeed at, right? You touch on and you actually, you reached that moment in time. That was something, again, early on, I was able to walk through, and it takes years, as building a business does, to write a book and then get it published. So that very much formed a lot of the discipline that I have as an entrepreneur now. I've written other books, and you get better throughout the process. And that discipline of waking up on a daily basis, doing the same thing based on a passion that you have that drives you, and that's the second thing I'll say. I think having had a family that supported me and told me to go after my passions really emphasized the importance of doing things in the world, whether you're making money or not, that began with a vision and a sense of passion. And so when I say that I'm a financial advisor, I didn't fall into this because I'm chasing money or something of the sort. It took a lot of time and thought and introspection into who I am as a person, what skills I bring to the world that I had when I was younger, the sense of being able to organize, the kindergartner who would pass out sheets of paper to my sisters and grade them as a part of the fun that I was having as a kid, the educator in me, the ability to research family history. These are all pieces of who I came here as that inform very much the entrepreneur that I'm able to be. And I'm so grateful for community and, people that I've learned from along the way in my institutions, piano teachers, community, as you say, in addition to the moments of struggle. I had a bit of an existential crisis that lasted about 2 years when I was finishing up my dissertation program, my PhD at Columbia. And that moment, as difficult as it was, as much as it felt like the world was being pulled from under me, the lessons that I learned and just having to sit in that feeling really gave me a sense of stamina, I think, that you have to have as an entrepreneur today.
You know, you mentioned an existential crisis, right?
Mhm.
What was it during that time that you were being challenged by?
Mhm. That's a really good question. And it's something I didn't understand when it first began to happen. So some people say burnout, they might call it burnout. You know, other people might say things in life changed and I had a life change and I needed to make adjustments. For me, it felt deeper than that. That's why I call it existential. I started to realize there are fundamental beliefs that you have about yourself and the world and your place in it that are leading you on a path that doesn't feel authentic, you know,
Mm.
and that was really hard to say
Pause
because from
pause
the
for a
outside.
moment, because
Mhm.
what you just said there is so, potent. There are fundamental beliefs leading me down a path
Yes.
that isn't necessarily aligned with where I want to go. Could you point and say one of those fundamental beliefs for you that you?
Absolutely. I think what a lot of us struggle with, and I get surprised faces every time I say this because I work on presenting myself as, you know, very confident. You have a lot of self-esteem, but I think the way our society is structured, the way school is structured, we're not taught to live with the deep sense of value and worth. You know, I think, and we talked about this before when we were prepping, you know, the difference between who you are and what you do and really distinguishing the two. At that point in time, I was what I did, you know, and when you have that identity, you can celebrate all day long the fact that you graduated from Ivy Leagues, et cetera, but there's this deep sense of unease that you carry every day that you wake up. And I think that's why a lot of us struggle with depression and anxiety, right? Because the person I'm presenting in the world is very much attached to the things that I have to do to continue to maintain, you know, this image of myself. And I didn't want to let that go, which is why the existential crisis probably lasted 2 years, because I wasn't willing to say, you know, it's okay if I don't finish this PhD program. It's okay if it takes a while to build a business and everyone's looking at you like, what are you doing? What you're failing, it's okay to be in those moments and to stay true to an instinct I have that's not even fleshed out yet. That's the terrifying part, right? As entrepreneurs, you're jumping into the unknown here. And I realized to be who I want to be in this world and to reach the goals I had to be able to have that sense of I'm going to jump into what I can't see, but that I sense in me is the direction, regardless of the noise I hear around me.
And, I'm getting a sense of perhaps why you may have posed the question you did.
Mhm.
Is it you're choosing to be today and why? So I'm going to throw that question right back at you.
Sure.
Who are you choosing to be today and why?
And why? Can I preface that with a little bit of why I chose that question?
Yeah, please.
So, you know, I talk about beliefs a lot and our ability to sort of work on it, right? At disclaimer, as you said, I'm not at all discounting when I say you wake up and choose who you are. I'm not disavowing, you know, institutional discrimination and communal traumas that are passed. Like these are things that we have a responsibility to address and understand. What I'm talking about here is a more intimate dialogue with the self, you know, no matter what circumstance you're in on a daily basis that you wake up to, right? And so I just think there's something radical about the idea that the self I'm choosing to be, affected as it might be by my traumas of the past, fears of the future, is something I can choose and something that with consistent practice, I can alter on a granular level for myself, not for the world, for me. You know, there's a Michael Beckwith quote that I thought about when I came up with this question. He says, "You'd never leave the house without taking a bath," right? So why don't we give the same consistent attention to cleansing our mental faculties to create like that fresh, clean internal foundation from which we can then interact with the world and jump into our potential. And I'm very much about that. And I think even more so than the grind that it absolutely takes to get where you're trying to be as an entrepreneur, doing that consistent work on a daily basis to choose who you're being every morning is important, you know. So to your question, and I'll say taking up the time to focus and be in the feeling imprint of the person you want to be, right? Whether you fail that day or not is not important. It's the discipline of being in that feeling imprint of who you want to be. So for me, I use this process to make my career leap, which is why I will be a lifetime financial planner. I love what I do, but it also gives me the flexibility and time to integrate the other aspects of myself. Now, this is something I've been working on for the past month or so. I wake up thinking about money flow. It's something we all think about building careers, right? How do you 10x what you have right now while also focusing on giving to the community? So there's a practice when I do this daily, who do I choose to be, where you focus on what you would feel if you were bringing in the sort of income that you wanted to bring in, right? What is that feeling? Then step 2 is to say to yourself, well, what could I do now that would give me that feeling? My practice in the morning, I sort of skip step 2 to step 3, which is how do I be in that feeling now, regardless of what happened yesterday, regardless of the pushback I get today. I'm going to take these 20 minutes and be in that feeling of who I want to be. And I found that it's very much tied to a sense of self-esteem. Money flow and self-esteem to me go hand in hand. So, and I say that knowing that there might be pushback, but that's been my daily practice of who I choose to be as someone who's a little bit, better than the me I woke up to yesterday.
Yeah. Oh my God. Thank you for that question. As an entrepreneur, it can be lonely.
Yeah.
And the kind of loneliness I'm hearing you point to is the kind of loneliness where I'm not even here for myself.
Yeah.
And I can see this practice that you're leaving us with, giving me the space to not be so lonely and to be present and to be effective in life.
Yeah.
So you point to those 3 steps. 1, to say, how would I be feeling if what I'm creating for myself was here now?
Yeah.
And then you often skip the second step, but there's the second step that
It's
says,
important.
what do I do right now to have this feeling?
Mhm.
And then the third step, if I get it, is how do I conjure up that feeling in my body right now, regardless of what I'm doing?
Regardless of what I'm doing, and it's ridiculously difficult. Like, it is one of the most difficult things to and a lot of authors talk about this, Dr. Joe Dispenza. There are a lot of people out here who are writing about this, but to get your body out of the habit of what it's used to doing every day and to say, you know what, I want to feel the peace and stability that I would if I were retired and had everything I wanted. And then to move through the day in that feeling, it is difficult, which is why I think choosing to continuously go back to that practice on a daily basis is paramount, I think, in building, and moving towards the dreams we're trying to achieve.
Yeah. Well, we're going to open it up.
Mhm.
So the people who are in the studio audience with you may ask you some questions. And before all that, though, as we await a couple of questions, how does that practice manifest? What are the benefits that does practice manifest in your practice as a financial advisor?
Mhm. I think that's a great question. And it goes to what you would call the quest of the entrepreneur, the quest of the entrepreneur. I think there's a paradox in being an entrepreneur today, where you have the world projects onto you these steps that you have to take. You need to grind this much, put in this much hard work, wake up at this time, don't work on the weekends, et cetera, et cetera. And I think there's this lonely and sort of difficult paradox that you have to sit in. Like, I'm in this world, but not of it. I know we've heard that quote, but then how do you apply that on a practical level, right? So holding a vision of what you're trying to do, you listen, you take the pieces that you need, but then stick to the idea that to be the entrepreneur I need to be, I have to be flexible in self. I have to be able to pivot when it's necessary as a core part of the entrepreneurial process. And to do that sometimes means paving a path, that doesn't look like what others are telling me to do. And so I'm in that moment now, which is I get, this is how you build the business. But then I look at the work that I've been doing. I look at the moments that have been huge for me, winning PIN Award, publishing a book. These things felt like flow, right? I did do the work, but it didn't feel like the grind that I'm being told to do. So how do you show up in a way that's different from what you're seeing around you? And that's my daily practice and how I apply it to, my job as a financial advisor.
And how does it show up in your interactions with your clients and the way you serve your clients?
It keeps me fresh for them. I mean, part of the process, which is why I love this conversation with you, it's all relationship based for me. Not all financial advisors function that way. Edward Jones is moving towards relation-based comprehensive planning, which is why I'm working with them. But it's really about being able to listen, which is what you do when you wake up and say, who do I choose to be? Well, you have to sit and wait for the answer, right? You listen to what my clients are coming in and expressing, sometimes so much so that you hear something different than what they're saying. And that's part of the job, right? Because my job has been to take what may look like chaos and make structure out of it and say, okay, when you retire, well, how do we take this money that you think won't last you and come up with strategies to sort of make a plan that works for you and your family, that has many different goals and pieces. So it's a very similar process. And I think it just keeps me humble and it keeps me fresh to have to do that with myself. It's sort of like as an author, you look at a blank page and you slowly start to craft a story that's going to stretch and change as your imagination changes and you move down winding paths. And that's the sort of humbleness that you have to sort of, bring to your interaction with clients. So it's the way I think about that.
So in a way, one might say, well, you're a financial advisor. It's easy to actually develop that kind of personal relationship with your clients. Would you say it's difficult for other types of entrepreneurs to do, or it's all relationships when it comes to business success?
I absolutely believe it's all relationships. I think the difficulty is we're moving from a past sort of perspective of business building that wasn't relationship based. So I think the difficulty, just like showing up and saying, I want to be a different person, I want to learn how to have more patience. The adjustment, I think, is what's difficult. You grew up, your father grew the business this way, your father's telling you this is what you need to do. To kind of shift into relation-based thinking, I think that's the challenge. The doing is easy. You're having a conversation. I'm an introvert, right? I need to rejuvenate on my own to be able to have conversations, but understanding energy management over time management gives me the energy to be able to put relationships first. I don't think it's that hard. I just think it's a matter of changing the way we were conditioned.
Yeah, and if you were looking for an internal indicator that lets you know whether you are or not in relationship-based thinking, what's that indicator for you internally?
That's good. I think I keep talking about the unknown. I think that there are two types of discomforts. There's one that screams alarm, you need to shift gears and protect yourself. There's another kind of discomfort that says, this is great, you're stretching past your capacity and you're allowing what's coming into the moment to stretch you so that you can do the work you were brought here to do. It's the second sort of discomfort that, in fact, I anticipate and I look for, and it brings me a sense of excitement. Okay, I've stretched past my capacity, right? And I, built something here that may be uncomfortable because you become vulnerable in that moment. It's you are open to potentially being hurt, and that's the space I think where you are fully yourself. And so I would say it is a sense of discomfort, but it's not the bad kind. It's the exciting kind.
You say it's where you're fully yourself, and I venture to say maybe it's also where I am truly in service of my clients, of the world. Dr. Noni, a half hour goes by so fast.
So fast. Yep, it does.
So I'd love for you to help us close out by saying your final comment for today and letting people know how they may connect with you.
Okay, sounds good. So yesterday we had our CEO, Penny Pennington, come to town. We had a diversity book club. And we read and talked with her about this book. It was called The Wisdom of the Bullfrog. And there was a quote I pulled from it. It says, leadership is accomplishing a task with the people and resources you have while maintaining the integrity of the institution. And as I was reading that, thinking about our talk today, I thought, that's great, that's true. But it's also integrating that with an integrity of the self. And I think choosing to wake up and say, no matter what happened today, I'm going to revise in my mind. I'm going to put myself in that feeling of who I want to be. That is integrity of this. It doesn't mean being honest every day. It means going back to the drawing board and working on self. So that's what I wanted to leave everyone with. How to get in touch with me. Please contact me via email. It's Denise, it's my middle name, DENISE.Carter @edwardjones.com. I tend to say I do one-on-one consultations, but here I'm going to say one-on-one conversations. I would love to chat with you about what we talked about today or financial planning in my business.
Dr. Carter, thank you for being here. Folks, thank you for being here and thank you for providing your attention to this conversation, a conversation that's a reminder to you to choose who you're going to be today and to say to yourself why, and to anchor that to yourself as your choice in this moment. So thank you for being here. This is your Daily Huddle for today. As always, I want to leave you with this. Love. It's not as hard as you think to love even the ones you don't want to love. As a matter of fact, bring someone to mind right now whom you'd rather not love and say to yourself, I love you. Laugh out loud. You know, belly laughs, throw your head back and pretend no one is watching. Do an ugly laugh until you cry and see what that generates for you. Eat, I say mostly plant-based. We have a great friend, Dan Cornett, who's leading a challenge for the Daily Huddle family. Join that challenge to practice with us, eating in a way that fuels your temple, such that you can choose on a daily basis who you are being and why, and keeping that temple alive. Not just one more day, but one more day that's vibrant and energetic. Give, sleep, move your body, and check your assumptions. What you think is the truth may not be. This is your Daily Huddle. I'm looking forward to seeing you here on Monday. We're here every day, Monday through Friday, being here to give you a shot in the arm and a shot in the heart. Have a great weekend. I'll see you soon.
Thank you all. Love you all.
Thank you,
you.
Laura.
Excellent job.